I'm gonna die.
No, you're not. You're Australian. You're impossible to kill.
Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Battlefield 1 hard difficulty video walkthrough. This is the final part of the first war story. It is steel on steel. It's 22 minutes of tank on tank action in the middle of what looks like Heartbeat, and it's not the easiest mission either. I would probably say out of the entire game that this is the hardest mission in the game. And the only reason it's even remotely difficult is because if you have two tanks that can see you, they can hit you. And if they hit you at the same time, they can do massive damage. And a lot of the times, it can be very easy to get yourself in a bad spot, and because you're a tank, you can't recover that well, because the tanks are incredibly slow and the rounds the enemies fire are incredibly fast. So that one hit just then put me down to 58. So you can imagine if you have two tanks firing at you at the same time, it doesn't end well. And it's the only part of the game where I will honestly say you might suffer a few deaths just because of the fact that the tank fights are always tricky. And my advice for them is, of course, to try and put some cover between you and an opponent, but it's also to understand the geometry, understand where you are, and try to exploit the pathing and the behaviour of vehicles. One of the things I've noticed on this particular Battlefield game is if you put a wall between you and a tank, it almost 100% disincentivises them to attack you until they've got a clear shot. I don't know how their behaviour and their hierarchy and the scripting is formed and how it works, but I'm almost guaranteed that they do not go into firing logic until movement logic is done. And if you never let movement logic be done, they will never fire, and that's kind of the theory that I was using, and it comes to full fruition at the end of this video, where I put you in a spot where nothing really attacks you. They can, they just choose not to because the way that the pathing and the behaviour of the AI can be exploited, which is what we're going to do. So right now, I'm shooting at a tank. I just don't know I'm shooting at a tank. I think I'm shooting at something just parked up, and I'm like, I'm going to take this thing out. It takes a few hits. Maybe it's not important. Later on, we're going to get attacked by a tank on fire. This is what we're firing at. So don't stop firing, guys, thinking you're not doing anything. You're actually doing everything. Keep firing until that piece of shit blows up, and it will never assail you later on. But as you push into this little town, there's immediately going to be one of the old school guns on the floor that's manned by a dude, so get rid of that. And then to your left in the building, there's going to be a dude on a machine gun, so you want to attest him as well. The big threat here is, of course, the tanks and the mini-tanks. The mini-tanks have great mobility and good damage. The main tanks just take a pounding and kill you fast. So you want to use distance, you want to use superior aiming, and you want to hope that the AI stops when you shoot them, because sometimes when you put a round on an enemy, they stop. I don't know why, they just kind of accept death and go down quickly, which is always fun. But something you can't forget about either, at this moment in time, you can get little shit men running around at your ankles, nipping at you like fleas, and then every so often they'll throw out an anti-tank grenade, and if you get a few of those, they can stack up really quick. Additionally, later on, that strategy that I'm going to be showing you, one of the greatest aspects of it is the fact that not only does it mess with the pathing of the AI for the vehicles, but it also means that you will not get swarmed or even attacked by the small guys, because for whatever reason they never find a way to get to you, they never chuck a grenade over the wall, they never get that far because they're too busy being confused about what you've done. And all of this adds together to culminate in a victory for you, hopefully. The checkpoints are rather spaced, but they're not bad. They're very doable. We're about to come up against our flaming tank, I think, in a moment. He's going to get our attention. Whenever you have to heal the tank, always get out. It's way faster. It's good practice too for multiplayer. You're going to be doing a lot of that in multiplayer. But there's a checkpoint when you get just past this windmill. I'm about to get shot as well. So I see some stuff over there. I'm firing some hits that way. Shooting with the machine gun. Another hit down the range. Boom! That's me getting hit. So there's a little dude to my right, and there is a tank! And lo and behold, what we were shooting at from a distance was a bad guy, and it was one away from being killed. So, Distance is king here. If you can get a shot on somebody, don't think you're being cheesy, don't think it's not important, because it's probably going to help you win. And then once you've got rid of these little shitbangers in the street, you can push on, go across the bridge, get your checkpoint, and then you're going to be taking on 2 tanks, and then we're going to be pushing to the final part of the mission, which is quite long, because it's about 2 to 3 sequences of enemies, and the last 2 are all vehicles, and the vehicles can be a nightmare, but once again, I do have a pretty good position that should get us through that. But at the moment, gaming is kind of crazy. You might have noticed on the channel that we've got a ton of Battlefield now, and before that there was a ton of Gears of War, so it's making it difficult to get back to the projects that we're running. The projects are still going to run, guys, don't worry about that, they're still going to get finished. It's just I have to prioritise the new stuff, because the new stuff is what the majority of people generally want. I know there's a lot of people that want the stuff that I was doing before, but new is the best way to invite new viewers and to grow, and that's the main reason why I hit the new releases quite hard. You might not see the point of it, you might not personally like it, but it is useful to getting the channel exposure, and more exposure to the channel means more options for me to bring more things to you, so everybody wins. And hopefully, with this November coming up, jam-packed full of things, there's going to be something for everybody, and there's going to be something that catches your interest, because I believe Darksiders got delayed, so we'll not be seeing Darksiders too soon. I think it got delayed for a month. But there is Titanfall 2 that's finally getting a campaign, and I'm finally going to jump into Titanfall because I didn't buy the first game because I wasn't interested in playing it on 360, and I didn't want to buy an Xbox One. So I kind of missed that game. It didn't have a campaign, didn't have anything to offer except for the multiplayer. It looked fun enough, but I never really gave it a chance because I never owned it, never got near it. So the sequel I'm going in quite interestingly just to see what they do, because if you think about it, Modern Warfare was one of my favourite Call of Duty campaigns because it was just very different to the second game, Call of Duty 2. Call of Duty 3 was shit, don't play it. And then COD 4 came out and it's like, wow, this is something else. They made, essentially, the guidebook on how to make this stereotypical, annually released Call of Duty campaign of everything blowing up, everything going crazy, everything over the top, everybody dying, everything looking dire, and then an ultimate victory. They created that in a lot of ways in gaming. Of course, this is a story that's been told 1,000 times, but in gaming and how it's represented and presented with gameplay, they wrote the book. And now they get an opportunity to do it again. And it'll be interesting to see if it's all the nuance of everybody coming together that makes it something fantastic, or if just having those creative visions behind it is enough to push creative people to make something new. Because at this moment in time, I think first-person shooters have been stagnant for a very long time. And a lot of people will be like, well, but Chris, you didn't play the new Doom, you didn't play this, have you tried Shadow Warrior? Like, do you know why I say this? Because those games are using old-school mentalities in new technology. Those new games everybody's getting stoked for, the new Doom that's amazing, the new Shadow Warrior game and stuff like that everybody's really liking, they're liking them because they're made like old games. And that's not moving forward. That's a different direction, but it's using what we've learned looking backwards, pushing that forward. And I don't want to push forward. I want it to be our own thing. And I want it to evolve again. And don't get me wrong, the new Doom seems great. Everybody loves it. Shadow Warrior seems really fun. I'm looking forward to playing it. But I want shooters to push and to change and to become what they were back in the day now. So you look at all these pinnacle moments in games, you look at the Half-Lives, you look at the GoldenEyes, you look at the Call of Duties, you look at the Halos. These games set standards and just changed everything. Maybe some more than others depending on where you played, but there were games that stood out for reasons. Nowadays, the only reason a game stands out is because of how fucking good it looks, or how many people you can shove in its multiplayer, and I don't think that that's a good thing. I just don't. Or MAG would have won, like, Game of the Century, wouldn't it? And it didn't, because it was just a million dudes in a shit game. And maybe it wasn't shit, never played it, I'm just being silly. Could be great, but I don't think it was. I think it was just kind of decent. Really pretty games. Look at Metro on PC, with all the specs on like a Titan X or whatever. It looks ridiculous, but it's still Metro. At the end of the day, it always comes back to the game. Doesn't matter how pretty it is, it comes back to the game. You know, we have this mentality, don't we, of, oh, I'd bag her, because we don't like the way something looks. But that's the thing, you know. looks only go so far. You know, you wouldn't marry somebody you would want to bag. I know this is a horrible topic for people who are girls right now. But it's the same kind of... That joking notion is the same thing for everything. Graphics are the things that get people excited. They're not the things that get people off. And they're not the things that get people coming back. You know, you don't go back to a game because of how good it looks. I've played some amazing looking games that I've played once. It's the game itself. By the way, this is the place you want to be for this next 2 sequences of waves, because for whatever reason, this wall just stops people from even caring about you, and you can shoot over it and be an absolute nightmare. And because you are behind a giant wall, none of the little dudes will even accost you. It's a wonderful spot, and up until this recording, I had never had a tank find me. I had always had them search around that middle train yard and just get lost, and I killed them. This one recording, one of the small tanks busts through the wall and comes in and challenges me, and it's the only time it's happened, but then you'll notice, for the rest of the video, none of them do it, so it's very, very rare. I find it upsetting, though, that we have the best technology we've ever had, yet we're releasing the most uninspired projects because of it. And it doesn't make sense to me, even though I've analysed it a million times, there's something that just doesn't calculate. And I understand why, at the moment, why it's easy to feel this way, because we're currently in sequel-itis. It's something that I believe Hollywood probably started at some point, and infected everything else. Look at that fucking Harry Potter sequel. What is it called? A bunch of magical, wonderful creatures I don't care about? They want to turn that series of books into like 9 movies, for no reason. Like, why was The Hobbit more than 1 movie? Why do we dilute everything for money? It baffles my mind. And gaming is no different now. When we're not looking back and remastering shit, we're making sequels, which is looking back and improving on shit. And it gets to the point where there's only so many ways you can do certain things before you're doing the same thing. And fatigue is something that sets in, but not everybody gets it, you know? Some people just like an iterative version of what they like, and there's nothing wrong with that, so those people are completely sated and are enjoying modern gaming. But I'm not. I like new IPs, I like risk, I like innovation. Crafting the next generation's HD remasters when all of that dries up and we become stagnant again. You know, I want those landmark games that are now being forced on us in subpar versions of those games. Only now they're slightly shinier, but with frame rate just as bad. Like, I want to see new things. And I think this game, as much as it is part of the sequelitis, has added a couple of new things in refinements. I think the idea of a massive Zeppelin coming down in the middle of a match, looking really pretty in high solid frame rate with 64 players, is amazing. It's not much of a jump from the Levolution shit that they did before, but it's still kind of amazing. And it's all culminated in something special. But it's taken them like 7 games to get here. And to me, I don't think any game should go 7 games. I really don't. I'm glad some have, because there's some games I really like that have gone that far. And I know a lot of people love those series, but to me, when we stop creating new things, we don't move anywhere. We just kind of live in those halcyon days. And nostalgia vision is blinding. And it gets to the point where we'll eventually forget to breathe. We'll become so just hypnotized and so comforted. And it'll be so easy and familiar that nothing taxes us. And I don't like the idea of that. These are the tough waves, by the way, lots of tanks. I'm just going to tease them from this distance, divide and conquer, and none of them are going to accost me except for the one that you're going to spot. But it just makes me really sad that we don't do anything anymore. You know, we don't have these things that are pushing. Like, the biggest area of gaming nowadays that's getting pushed, and really being pushed mechanically and in interesting ways, is VR, which is 5 or 10 years away from being actually functional for a proper game, and indies. And indies are one of those things where, you know, it's kind of that vicious cycle, isn't it? They have the small team and the small budget to do reckless, crazy things, but then they have a small team and a small budget, so it's limiting in what they can do with their recklessness. And it's just this thing of, you get these massive teams with all this money, And what do? They just palm out sequels. They just push out sequels, identikit sequels off the assembly line. Now you get a new hat. Blah, 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 blah. Here's a microtransaction to keep you occupied. Here's something to open that's filled with stuff you don't need, that you paid for, that you'll pay for again because it gives you that gambling carrot on a string bullshit. You know, please gamble responsibly. Well, stop advertising fucking gambling on a bloody tablet that gives me free turns, so I can get myself in a bunch of bloody debt because I don't know when to say no. Because people have terrible self-control. Like, that's all it is. They're turning games into gambling, and games are just getting pretty and prettier and prettier, so that you don't realise that they're not games anymore. And all you're being sold is an intravenous delivery system to the gambling. Like, look at Gears of War. Gears of War 4 is the safest campaign I've probably ever played. It's half, like, try new super generic thing, and half try the thing we did best before. There's nothing new in that game. There is literally nothing. If you don't play it, you've missed nothing. Because nothing happens. It's just a complete impasse. It is. It self-negates itself. It's self-nullifying. And is it fun, and can it be enjoyable? Definitely. But the story's not going to set you on fire. There's no new additions to the gameplay that you could arguably say have redefined Gears. It is literally safe. Like, they could put a picture of that so that they didn't have to give you the child safety label on toys that you buy for young people. Like, that is how safe that fucking game was. And it's a beautiful game. Runs at a good frame rate in the multiplayer. Runs like shit everywhere else unless you play on PC. And I say runs like shit. It runs at 30 and it's fine. But it should run at 60 because this is, you know, next generation. We should be getting better performance, and we're not. It's the same it ran as on the Xbox 360. Just now it's a bit prettier in doing the same thing. And it's not enough. It's just not enough. But guess what you do have? Instead of having all these risky, weird, bizarre features that barely get played 6 months down the line, or having all these really interesting things that keep people playing your games, because you used to be able to just sell a game and there it was, please play our game, we've put all this cool shit in it. Now we get it sold to us via DLCs and season passes and all this other bullshit. And now we don't even have that. So instead, guess what we do? We put in this system of loot crates where you get all this weird bullshit that effectively the only useful thing in it is extra colours of your penis and additional experience to grow your penis. And that's it. That's all they do. They add nothing. They add absolutely nothing. Because if they do add something, it's pay to win. And everybody thinks that that is this ugly word. I'm sorry, paying to play is just as ugly. Like, paying to exist is just as ugly. Like, how is it that we had more in games 10 years ago without patches that were more balanced than they are now with 1 million patches? It's because it's given them this safety net of laziness. And I say this 100% in ignorance, because I'm not a developer. And I appreciate that there are struggles, there are stories behind the scenes that we will never understand why things become the way they are. But do you know when somebody's given a massive amount of money to make something? You've got to make something. You can't just drag everything from the dirt that's already been tread on to get to where you are. And that's what makes me sad. Like, this is not Battlefield 1, this is Battlefield 5. And even then it's not Battlefield 5, because there's 1 million fucking dated Battlefields that no bugger counts anymore. Like, it's just... I can't tell you how many times I've been in tanks. I can't tell you how many times I've aimed down sights. I can't tell you how many old rifles I've fired at people from, like, Austro-Hungary areas and Austria and Germany and... like, too much. And it's the same with modern stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've been part of a squad of generic dudes that have all essentially had the same personality. I can't tell you how many times I've fired a gun that generally looks a little bit like an ACR, but with all the Picatinny rails and different attachments, it could bloody be anything. You know? Like, how many times have you called in an airstrike? How many times have you gone prone? How many grenades have you thrown? Like, in the span of how many years games have been around, you would think we would have come up with something else. But if you do too little, you're a walking simulator. And if you do too much, you're too complicated and none of the idiots will play. And we need to make everything accessible and noob-friendly now, because that's the best way to appeal to the mass market. Give them a gun that when they fire it, everybody gets killed. Because that's what people want. Give them a gun you don't have to aim. There you go. Give them an ability to sit on their ass half to death and shoot you. Like, it's very strange. But keep shooting the tanks, guys, and hopefully you're a little bit more uplifted about the way the gaming is going, because I certainly am not. We have all the tools as well, and that's the thing. As easy as it is to be negative and be down on the current era of gaming, we have all the tools needed to fix this malady, to remedy this ail that we have, this rut of expecting less. And settling for less too. This complacency can be ended in a blink of an eye, and hopefully it will, because there's some interesting looking projects coming out. Maybe they will be the ones that bridge the gap and make these games really feel next generation. Like, maybe I get into the multiplayer of this and I fall in love, and it really does stand out as something that you couldn't do before. You know, all those other games were needed to get to this point, and I really hope that that's true. I just don't feel like it is, in a lot of ways. The tank's AI, because it's so good this position, it's almost a little bit too good. They will just get lost and not be a threat and never engage, so you will have to put yourself in a bad spot to draw them out. And because I don't want to destroy the wall, because it's kind of awesome, I'm going to go around in this slow-ass tank. And the tank does this weird thing. I cannot turn the aimer any further than where I am right now. This is the most I can turn to the right, because it locks the axis of the turret. You cannot turn the turret behind you. I don't know many tanks that worked that way. Maybe it's a limitation of the period. Of course, in World War II, the tanks definitely got an upgrade, but at this time, maybe they didn't have that technology. Or maybe it's a conceit to make the game more difficult. All it means is that you have to turn and do awkward things in a tank that doesn't control very fun. And, you know, that's not really the biggest penalty you could have faced, so it's not so bad. Oh, that's the end. Well, there you go, we've done it. You see? Super safe as well, never got engaged, really easy, just blow shit up. And I died about 3 or 4 times before I found that spot, because in the town, tons of little shitbags all around you, like Pikmin, trying to pick you up and dump you in the spaceship, and then a whole host of explosives from tanks that have got really good aim. So it's by far the most comfortable position I could see, and it helps you get through. So thank you for watching, guys, and you take care now.